I spent most of the next day in the library. It felt like such an ordinary library. It wasn't as mysterious as the one in the cabin. Perhaps I had a different expectation. Perhaps I should have one of those rooms from transit installed. Then, I could spend quiet afternoons reading and relaxing. Clearly, the current atmosphere was too neat, too businesslike, with just a simple wing-back chair behind a single desk. Although the shelves were stacked with many of my favorite books, and sections of other old manuscript written in various exotic languages. Most of which, in my current mortal state, were unreadable. I browsed through them regardless, looking at the pictures. I looked for but couldn't find the notebook, nor could I remember where I placed it. Anyway, I didn't miss it, being I was told it wasn't useful to me any longer. That afternoon, while sitting in my chair behind the desk, I thought about my recent visit with Casey and Crystal. It left me wanting to return to holiday. I would love to go back today and relive my last time there. Several times, since I left, I got ready to go back, but each time I felt restrained from doing so. I contacted George and Beth twice, and we spoke, but only briefly. I was already looking forward to next year. Then I thought about the dream, again, I had about my kids. I could have stayed there forever. I assume there are many people and places that would make for the perfect heaven, each person and place tugging at my heart. I felt overwhelmed. My time here was limited. I wanted to hold on to every moment, fearing things might change after I returned to Earth, and I was worried about that. I don't want to leave. I want everything to stay this way. Why couldn't I have died and ended up here? Oh, boy, I was feeling it. I certainly have my work cut out for me when I get back. I went for a walk and found a small amount of solace as I walked out onto the beach. I sat in the sand and gazed out onto the ocean, mentally forcing myself to move on from those thoughts and feelings. Often while walking, I met some of the neighbors, who also appreciated the walk and the casual sightseeing. Today the beach was empty of any other humans, neighbors. So, I directed my attention to waves splashing over the stone retaining wall. The wall was at least 300 yards outside the surf. Sometimes, large waves broke through the opening in the middle but were subdued quickly. The opening was broad enough to sail a 200-foot yacht through. Many of those who lived on the bay had docks built, most of which moored extravagant yachts and sailboats. As I sat looking out into the ocean and admiring my neighbors' floating hotels, I heard a repeated thud sound. A young man came jogging behind me. He was running at a quick pace, especially for running in the sand. He flew past me, straight into the water. I laughed when I saw him run right on top of the water. In fact, he picked up speed. After witnessing his determination, my only thought was how much I hated walking in the sand. He navigated the bay and maintained his run on the other side. I wore a grin all the way to the house. I had lunch on the patio. While eating, I thought about the rooms I had not investigated since coming here. It was odd I have spent so much time here without going through the entire house. I contributed most of my time in the living room, the kitchen, and the library. In the evenings, I often sat in the backyard, in the garden in particular, or next to the pool, which was fun. I love to swim. Also, I spent a few nights in the outbuilding standing under the hot water with music loudly playing dancing around Waziuki. It was nice relaxing in the hot water, and a needed distraction. After lunch, I tried a door in the back of the library. I hadn't paid too much attention to it, as I was just too busy going through books and magazines. I was still engrossed trying to find out anything about me or Sierra. The back door opened to a long dark corridor. As I entered, I could see dim yellow lights projecting out on either side. I didn't notice them when I first opened the door as they barely lit the entrance. I wondered if there was an end to it, because I must have walked downward for at least half a mile until it leveled out. A short distance thereafter, I saw a bluish light up ahead. That tunnel turned into a unique hallway, a glass hallway lined with display tables holding sculptures and other artwork. It led to an underwater glass room. It looked like a big bubble with a flat bottom. Once inside the room, I remembered my daydreams of sitting in this underwater getaway. I had an epiphany. It was a Jules Verne type of glass room, unbelievable. Right before me were thousands of fish, and an expansive, colorful coral reef stretching out in every direction. Two overstuffed chairs sat in the middle of the room facing out into the ocean, and a cot was set up at the front next to the glass windows. A pod of dolphins was playing 20 feet off the end of the room. Darting bright yellow, blue, and green fish moved like a painter, making long strokes with his paintbrush on a blue canvas. Even the sun looked like a Van Gogh painting, shining down through the water, distorted and sparkling. The sunken room itself sat right outside the break wall and 30 to 40 feet underwater. It was amazing, and I spent the rest of the day peering out of my looking glass. I decided to spend the night, and it was exciting. When it got dark, I turned on a small lamp in the room. It drew several suspicious-looking fish up to the glass. Things got real when two great white sharks appeared out of the blackness to show me their noses. Those big white teeth made me shudder. Of course, I fearlessly stared back at them, unafraid. I'd have to be well compensated for standing and viewing those faces more than twice. I planned to sleep in the cot overnight, even though it was creepy. I didn't know whether I should sleep with the light on or off. When I turned the light off, it was too black. Because it was so black, I poked myself in the eye before my eyes could adjust to the darkness. If I left the light on, I suspect those great whites might try to figure out several scary ways to wake me up. Again, with the light off, and once my eyes adjusted, I could imagine having to deal with huge long dark shadows swimming next to me throughout the night. Light on, or light off, I didn't know which was worse. Perhaps spending the night was a bad idea. I must be crazy. As I was sitting the next day counting and admiring the colorful small fish, I thought about the other rooms and doors I have yet to investigate. So, after 2 days of observing life undersea, I returned to the library and to the front door. The mysterious door to the left of it led to the stone castle-like hall which ran along the backyard. At first, I thought it might be a coat closet. Surprise! The hall was all stonework, large, heavy stones set like a castle inside. I wondered if there were 2 stories, one on top of the other, because when I entered, I passed over the archway above the steps going from the backyard to the front of the house. Several windows lined the ocean side of the hall, looking out over the gardens and bay. Each window was separated by stone-arched columns rising to the ceiling, like the wooden ones in the living room. Several beds sat between the columns, all of them neatly made. I believe I have a thing for columns. Across from the beds was a tall, wide fireplace. Wood was stacked to the side. I walked over and stood upright inside. There was an old rocking chair next to the fireplace. It gave me a warm feeling as I imagined sitting, relaxing next to the fire, rocking in the old wooden rocking chair. I quit because I had a vision of knitting needles which freaked me out, although the fireplace was rustic and inviting. At the other end of the hall was a flat-cut stone wall. On the left side of the wall was an old ancient-looking arched wooden door leading to an observatory. The observatory was the dome I saw when sitting on the patio in the backyard. I thought to myself, Jeff, why aren't you more curious? It occurred to me there was a time for everything. I didn't do something unless it was time to do it. It was an odd sensation, not like anything I was used to, but I can't explain it any other way. Usually, I would have gone everywhere in the house. My lack of curiosity dumbfounded me. I wondered if they orchestrated everything I'm doing. Kind of like a carnival ride that takes you from point A to point B, and you're just along for the ride. Once through the door, I found Bart busy cleaning. The observatory was one room I hadn't considered until now. I don't remember dreaming about it. Honestly, I truly enjoyed it when I faced these little surprises. It was early evening, so I asked Bart to show me around and teach me how the room worked. Many types of instruments lined the outer wall, such as old-fashioned binoculars, microscopes, handheld telescopes, all made of gold, copper, brass, and silver. Maps or star charts encased in bronze frames hung on the walls. The room displayed so many exquisite antiques. Bart walked over, pulled a lever on the wall near the entryway. When he did, the ceiling opened. Once opened, a massive telescope in the center of the room projected out. The telescope was attached to a silver center pole with bronze wheels on both sides, allowing the telescope to rotate in a full circle. As the telescope spun, the dome rotated a complete 360 degrees. The casing was built of carved bronze, copper, and inlaid silver. It was such a handsome old and flawless antique. I walked over and tried to look through the peephole. I couldn't see anything. I could never see through those little peepholes on the business end of a telescope. Bart came and pushed a button under the telescope. A beam of light came out of a platform behind it, producing a holographic model of what the telescope was pointing at. I was taken back by all the moons and planets within the telescope's view. I spent an hour trying to look at every celestial body, knowing I didn't have a clue or memory of anything I was seeing. Bart helped me by informing me what each planetary body was, all in 3D. Well, his names and descriptions arrived in one ear and disappeared out the other. His words stampeded like a bunch of wild kids breaking through the front door and out the back. You yell at them, but not one of them pays attention, leaving you to wonder what that was all about. The telescope itself was an old-fashioned way of looking at the solar system, but it was fascinating. Then, I spotted one planet with a rainbow between its day and night. It enveloped the whole planet where the light shifted to darkness. What planet is that, Bart? It's not a planet. It's a moon called Neon, and yes, it supports life. In fact, one of Dana's best friends lives there. I had no clue companions could even have best friends outside their humans. Tell me more. Neon is a moon even though it looks like a planet. That's because it orbits Commerce and not the sun. The days, or daylight, are complicated depending on its position to Commerce and Commerce's position to the sun. Nights that can last 4 days and involve the whole moon. I want to go there? Bart told me he needed to finish cleaning. He said he would ask Dana to parade me around if I desired her to do so. She loves the place, he said, and called for her. Dana and I boarded Louis, and we left for Neon. Dana said, "This will be fun." We entered the atmosphere and hovered over a large field. It was the size of half a football field. As soon as we exited Louis, a little creature flew up next to Dana's face. It was, I guess for best description, a small glowing fairy, a small young female glowing fairy. Her wings lit up like a rainbow. She had long flowing dark hair, resembling Dana's. Her eyes glowed silvery blue. She leaned in to kiss Dana on the cheek. In what sounded like a faint whisper, the little creature said, "Hi, honey." Dana answered, "Hello, my dear." They whispered one to another for a minute until I coughed to let them know I was there. Afterward, the little creature flew over and positioned herself right in front of me. I put my hand up flat. She settled on it. I barely felt her tiny feet in the palm of my hand. She felt delicate, almost tickled. She blew me a kiss, fluttered, and flew off. Dana explained the small creature was an angel, called a wing angel. Millions of them lived on Neon. They are the makers of the power units used throughout Sierra. They also complete all the integrated work on the companions. Because of their size, they're capable of accomplishing all the micro work on any intricately small products. The tallest angel on Neon stood only 6 inches tall. Dana explained she was named after the little angel who completed the finishing touches to Dana herself, Dana being the namesake of that one. So, this was Dana's friend Bart spoke of. Apparently, the small angels picked a particular companion when completed, and named them after themselves. The young angel was also named Dana, Dana, Clan of the Blue Orchid. I asked, Clan of the Blue Orchid, huh? Yes, back in the beginning, when the angels first settled here, one leader had an idea for naming groups by geographic area. They call this the Field of the Blue Orchid because many varieties of them grow here. After a while, each one selected whatever clan they preferred to join. They're all family anyhow, with thousands of clan names. I chuckled at a few of the names, like Clan of the Empty Pond, or Clan of the Barking Lizard. Dana and Dana have had a remarkable family-type relationship since Dana's creation. Dana told me, even though I hadn't noted as yet, the young angel always showed up at the house when she was baking peanut butter cookies. It was uncanny how the little angel knew when to come for the cookies. Often she led a group of other little friends to eat cookies and sip tea throughout the afternoon. I spotted a group of the little creatures flying on the outskirts of the field we were standing in. That's when I saw the forest. It was lit up. I suppose it took time for my eyes to acclimate, as all the flowers glowed with different colored petals. Lit trees displayed several shades of brown and green, and all along the outskirts of the field were hundreds of tall bright silvery blue, like the little angel's eyes, orchids. They looked like small lamps all lined up in rows, turning the grass beneath them, and our feet bright green. We walked into the forest and down a path. It was fascinating to see all the neon colors on either side of us. We strolled up to a small pool. It was cobalt blue, and when I ran my hands through it, it left glowing red trails behind. Fruit hanging from the trees looked like multicolored Chinese lanterns. Just then, a ghostly figure came up the path and stopped next to us. Dana said, "Hi, Rory." "Hi back at you." He twisted and said, "Hi, Jeff." "Well, hello, Rory. Jack and I were just talking about you." "Okay, did you say anything good?" "Joking," I said, "no, not really." Rory was the watcher on the planet Airstream. Airstream had over 1 million miles of roads with an equal amount of camping spots in the parks. Small towns dotted the countryside along all the roads. The planet was developed for travelers and vacationers who like to travel via motorhome. Memo to self, set up a naming department. It was one place in Sierra where one drove to get around. The most popular motorhome was the Airstream. Almost everyone in Sierra took a road trip or two on Airstream, in an Airstream. The most suitable vehicle to haul the trailers was the gray pickup. Gray pickups were perfect for hauling those huge trailers around and could carry 8 passengers while doing so. The Stephen Gray Company designed and built the pickup. Stephen, as a young kid, was an exceptional mechanic and car thief. He ran a successful chop shop in New York City until he got caught. He especially loved to steal 4-wheel drive pickups, and he loved diesel pickups. When he was arrested, they recovered over $8 million worth of stolen parts in his shop. He slipped away to Ketchikan, Alaska, but was nabbed his first week there. While sitting in the city jail, he met Pastor Bill White. Apparently, the pastor said something to him he never forgot. I don't know what it was, but 5 years later, those words provoked him to call on God. They sent him to prison for 10 years but came out a new man. I might add Stephen led many others in prison to the Lord. He died in an auto accident at 34 years old, and this was meaningful because I lived in Ketchikan for 10 years. I didn't know Stephen Gray, but Pastor White was my pastor and a good friend of mine. Stephen wanted to continue being a mechanic, so he designs and builds the gray trucks to tow the large trailers. Now, the person who created the Airstream lived somewhere in Sierra. I know little about him, but he was a famous guy too. Many people lived in the motorhomes permanently, wandering here and there like couples who already raised their families, and turned into empty nesters, if that's possible. Many who lived there, such as competitive surfers, found it helpful to live in the trailers while traveling around to various beaches. Airstream had thousands of excellent beaches for surfing, and they even held annual competitions. It became a lifestyle for many young people, for many diverse reasons. I call those surfers modern-day hippies. Over 1 million people settled there. I should point out the trailers were bigger on the inside. Did I mention that? Rory, who also lived there, was an odd person. He did not live in a house. He lived outdoors in the parks. When he slept in a hammock he packed around with him. Everyone, at one time or another, saw him roaming around the parks and campgrounds inspecting the gardens, caring for them. Often, he was spotted out in the middle of the desert next to an oasis, living in an old Arabian tent. His tent was also bigger on the inside than on the outside, honest. I suspect he was a botanist back on Earth, a homeless botanist. He frequently came to Neon to get barrels of the water. It was the water that caused plants and animals to glow. He took the water back to one park or another, and with an artistic method watered the plants. At night, the plants he watered glowed in the shapes and characters he created. People traveled from all over Sierra to see his artwork. It was phenomenal how he could create such a light display. During such displays, Rory would be found on some park bench nearby telling tall tales to the children, keeping them engaged for hours. He has never occupied a home in Sierra. Rory finished loading his water onto a transportation vehicle and stood there looking at us with a telling look, letting us know we were holding him from more meaningful tasks. Both of us said good evening. Hardly a moment passed before he was gone. Why the hurry? We walked around for a while. I tried to look at everything I could when Dana said she wanted to show me the rainbows before we headed home. We got back into Louis and traveled west. We flew across a luminous ocean where it swirled several colors blending into one another. The shores were covered with light blue sand. Finally, we arrived at a point between light and darkness, a space several miles wide where the sky to the ground was thousands of rainbows, the same wall of rainbows I saw from the observatory. We came out into the sunlight. It all looked natural. It was such an unusual place. After returning home, I grabbed my pen and pad to write it all down. Then, I went to bed, dreaming of Neon and all I experienced there. The following morning, I went for another walk to the end of the bay. It was late morning, and I became hungry and thought about getting lunch when suddenly I left the ground and started flying. I was standing fixed upright, but it was as if something invisible surrounded me, holding me in place, as I flew over the water and up into the air. As I left the atmosphere, I began to spin like a propeller. It didn't make me dizzy, but it was an odd sensation. I put my arms out, which stopped me from spinning. Once in space, I saw all around me stars, nebulas, and clouds of all different colors and sizes. They lit the surrounding space and were so beautiful as I passed them. A few minutes later, I approached a blue planet. When I entered its atmosphere, I felt like I just laid in a warm bath. As I drew closer to the white clouds below, I could see a solid stone pillar standing out, and above them, a road or trail was protruding out like the threads of a screw. Down the sides, although it was square, a square screw. As I got closer, I could see one large tree within the patch of grass to one side. On the other was a large brick and mortar mansion. I landed in the grass next to the tree. There was a small blue pond next to that tree. In the pond, two familiar swans were floating. I'm sure I recognized them and was sure I'd seen them before. Next to them were several wood ducks, mallards, and several species of geese. Birds were everywhere, beautiful birds of every kind. As I was looking at them, a little dog about the size of my foot came running up barking, jumping up on my leg and wagging its tail. Boy, did his tail move fast. I reached down to pet the little character when someone spoke. I stood up to find Art standing in front of me. Hello, Jeff. Did you come for lunch? Art, what's going on? Did you bring me here? Oh, no, I didn't bring you here. I assumed you came for lunch. Are you hungry? Funny, I was thinking about getting something to eat when I flew off. Are you sure you didn't bring me here? Again, no, I didn't. Then he asked quite curiously, do you remember coming here in the past? No, I don't, especially in such a fashion. I don't like spinning like an airplane propeller. You need to put your arms out. I know. I figured that out. Where's this place? Where am I? This is just one of my humble homes. We used to meet here at least once a month for lunch. I figured that's why you came. I was just in the process of making tomato soup and toasted cheese sandwiches. Would you like some? That sounds perfect. Yes, I would. I kneeled back down to pet the pup. Is this your dog? Yes, that's Mighty Joey. He guards the place, keeps the birds in line. Let's go have lunch. Art led me across a cobblestone road or pathway to a set of brick stairs leading into the house. Once inside the door, we were standing on a balcony overlooking an extensive library. Bookshelves lined both sides of the room. Beyond the shelves were three large windows looking out into a broken blue sky. I walked down to gaze out over the world below. We were at least a mile up. I could see forests, lakes, valleys, a large river, and a small town on its bank below. A creek was flowing below the windows and was falling over the side to the earth below. Art, where are we? We are on the planet, Joey. Yes, I named it after my little buddy here. Art was holding Joey and stroking the little fellow's back. I took notice as he barked at me as if to say, "Here I am." We're not in Sierra, are we? No. Not everyone lives in Sierra, or on the earth. This is where Joey and I hide. It's our retreat. I don't know how you do it, but more times than not, you show up around lunchtime, and always when I'm making tomato soup and sandwiches. So, I'm not surprised you came. Funny thing, I was walking on the beach, looking for shells. I thought about tomato soup in particular when I was swept off my feet, and here I am. I know. It happens every time I make tomato soup. I always put an extra bowl out for you. What is it about tomato soup that draws you here? I don't know. I do like tomato soup. The rest is all new for me. Oh, right, I forgot about your condition. I looked around at all the bookshelves full of books. There was a wing-back chair next to the window. I assumed that was where Art sat to read. This is a fantastic place. I love your library. I still like to read, and I keep all my favorite books here. Lunch is almost ready, let's eat. Art led me down a hallway into the kitchen. There was hot soup on the stove. The stove was impressive. It was an old cast iron, wood-burning stove, with a brick oven next to it. I like your stove, but isn't it a lot of work gathering wood to use it? I don't use wood. Instead, I use various kinds of coal. He walked over to a closet, opened the door where several shelves held 1 foot by 2 foot by 3 inch blocks of different colored coal. I make each block from a different species of wood. He pointed at them. These blocks are for the stove. This one is hickory, that one is apple wood, and these are maple, and alder. Art named 15 different types of wood. They never burn up, so every one of them will burn forever if I left them lit. Forever? Well, a day or two. He walked over to the stove and opened a drawer at the bottom that was exactly the right size for holding the blocks of coal. Today, I'm cooking with maple. I like the flavor combined with the toasted cheese. He pointed at the brick oven and said, "This oven holds larger pieces of coal. I use all the same types, but they burn at a higher temperature. I make a lot of bread and pizza when I'm here." As he finished telling me, we noticed the toasted cheese sandwiches were smoking. Art hurried over to them and lifted a lid covering them. Wow, I haven't done that for a while. Hold on while I make more. He burned the toasted cheese sandwiches and looked at me as if it were my fault. Generally, you show up just as I finish. You're early. The stove contained enough soup and sandwiches for 2 people. I thought it amazing that he knew I would come by. He took the sandwiches off of the grill, walked over to a window, and tossed them out. The birds love burned toast. Hey, would you prefer PB&J over cheese? That works for me. Yes please, thank you. There was a balcony outside the kitchen, which hung out over open space all the way to the earth below us. It had a wonderful view. Art, I noticed a town or a village below us. Tell me about it. It's not a town, or a village. It's a camp. You don't remember it? No, I don't, sorry. Don't be sorry. It must be difficult for you. Going places, doing things, seeing people, and not remembering them. How horrible it must be. Art, I'm so fascinated all the time, I don't even think of it as horrible. Imagine coming to a place like this. Imagine never having been here before. Wouldn't it be amazing to experience everything for the first time? Well, you are used to it. I'm new, and everything is new for me. I guess if you put it that way. What an interesting concept. As we ate lunch on the little balcony, I asked, why didn't you say anything to me about our lunch engagement while I was at the cave? Well, you hadn't come for a while, and I didn't want you to feel obligated. I didn't want to ruin the spontaneity of the whole thing. Oh, right, I guess that makes sense. Then Art drew my attention to the camp below. The camp has no population. It is generally used as a base camp for fishing. The river below is full of very large salmon and other fish. We can walk down if you like, and I can show it to you. Up to 75 fishermen will show up late spring for the fish. After lunch, we walked down to the camp. As we walked on the road leading down, we didn't take over 20 steps before we were at the bottom. What? How did we get down so fast? What do you mean? Look at me. I'm sweating from the exercise. At the base of the pillar was a platform with a walking bridge connecting both sides of a slow-moving river. I chuckled at him as we headed for the camp. The camp contained 50 or more log cabins surrounding a square. It looked much bigger from on top of Art's pillar. It was built next to the river. Currently, the camp was empty. The camp is empty most of the year, but the cabins are available for anyone who wants to stay in them. If you notice, several trails are leading out of the camp. Most of them lead to lakes where you will find more cabins. I saw several of the lakes from on top of your pillar, although I didn't see the trails leading to them. I don't get it. This planet is not in Sierra, and I assume it's not in any of the other 41 regions of space either. Why do you come here? Why do others come here? I come here to get away. There are billions of remote places like this throughout the universe. I found this one with that rather high pillar, rock, standing straight up out of the river and thought it would be a good place to build a home. I had the path constructed so that one could walk to the top or bottom. It's rarely used because I don't need it. A little over 100 years ago, I invited some friends of mine for lunch. My good friend Don Miller saw the river below and came by afterward, bringing his sons and several fishing poles. From that time on, others, friends of Don's, brought their fishing poles too. This is the result. I guess the lakes spawn some rather large northern pike, and this river has a salmon run in late spring through summer that includes delicious sockeye salmon. I didn't notice until Art pointed it out. There was a smokehouse next to each cabin. Do you still like smoked salmon? Oh, yes, I do. I'm thinking of spring right now. Have I fished here before? Yes, several times. Well, maybe a couple hundred times. What time of year is it right now? It's late fall. If I remember correctly, salmon run from early summer to late fall. Is that the same here? That sounds about right, but the time zones here don't match Sierra, so the last group of fishermen left camp less than a week ago. Fishermen may still be at the lakes. You can catch pike in them year-round. This is such a beautiful place. Are there other communities on the planet? No, it's uninhabited, unexplored actually. I have been around it several times. Near the North and South Poles is like Alaska, the rest is mostly tropical jungle. I was thinking of putting a library out in the jungle. What do you think? You know, similar to the ones you have in Sierra. I really love those libraries and spend a lot of time visiting them. I don't know. It's not like transportation vehicles will travel here, since it's not on the grid. It was just a thought, friend. Art, I'm ready to go back up top. Are you ready? Yes, let's go. Again, as we started on the trail back up, 20 steps later, we were at the top. Art took me around the circumference of the pillar. There was a wonderful walking path around the perimeter of the top. He made some iced sweet tea, and we sat at a picnic table under the tree for the rest of the afternoon. We talked about several adventures Art was recently on while collecting artifacts. I asked, what about the dog? How does he fit? What do you mean, you don't remember Joey? No. Let me tell you again about Joey and how important he is to me. When I was in the 8th grade back on Earth, I had a paper route. Every day that paper route took me past an old abandoned house. One day, as I passed, I noticed a small dog digging in the dirt. It was the ugliest dog I have ever seen, somewhere between a sewer rat and a squirrel. For 3 days, I noticed it was out in the vacant yard digging. I stopped one day to see what it was digging for. He was digging for worms to eat. I realized the dog had no food, and no one was feeding him. Every day on my route, I stopped and bought beef jerky. I ate it as I made my rounds. When I passed the house, I was compelled to toss a piece of it into the vacant yard. After a couple of weeks, the little dog would stand in the yard waiting for me to pass. Eventually, I stopped and handed him a piece of the jerky, and I did every day from then on. I wasn't going to let him starve to death, but I wasn't concerned enough to take him home. He was so ugly and dirty. I called the dog pound, but they didn't even bother to come to get him. I continued to feed him. I could see tears well up in his eyes as he continued. Unfortunately, across the street were two full-grown German shepherds. They hated me, probably because I was a paperboy. Fortunately, they were fenced in. One day as I stopped, I didn't notice that one of the large dogs was out of the fence. He came after me. I'm sure he intended to hurt me. That little abandoned dog went after that big shepherd, chasing him all the way back to his yard. The little dog followed him right into the yard where the other one grabbed him and shook him around like he was a play toy. The owner of the dogs came out and was able to pull the little guy from the other dogs, but it was too late. They had killed him. I felt bad about that, but it didn't really sink in until I read a scripture about a man laying his life down for his friends, and how much greater that a man lay his life down for strangers. The pup, combined with the scripture, changed my life. I never forgot the little guy. For my whole life, I remembered what he did for me. That's probably the reason I'm here today. One afternoon, I was lying in the grass over by the mountain, when all of a sudden, this little dog, the size of my shoe, came up and started licking me all over my face. I recognized him immediately, and he has been with me ever since. Isn't he a handsome little character? You would think God sent him my way to show me how much he loved me. It worked. That's amazing. God has always worked in mysterious ways, hasn't he? Yes, he has, and he still does. There was a pause, and then I turned my attention to the lake. How is it you have a lake up here? There's a 4-foot tunnel leading down to the river below inside the pillar. It draws water up from the river to the far side of the lake. That's how the lake keeps full. The water is returned via the small creek flowing over the side. You don't remember that? Nope, but I do now since you mentioned it. It was so peaceful sitting in the shade under the tree, watching all the beautiful birds. Of course, Joey spent the afternoon chasing the ducks around and then found a spot under the table to take a well-deserved nap. Art, how do I get back home? It's easy, just imagine where you want to be and move. I thought of the house and moved. Before I said anything else, I was on my way. I shouted goodbye to Art and Joey. That was unexpected. Joey ran after me, barking, and Art waved at me as I left the ground. I returned the same way I came, without the spinning, and landed next to the pool. After landing, I tried imagining myself on the back patio, but nothing happened. I guess I needed to walk.